Here are just a few of a myriad of facts about Billy Conway. He grew up in a lower middle-class family in the Midwest. He adored his sisters, Trudy and Jane. Early on, he figured out how to balance hardship with grace. He skated his way to a hockey scholarship at Yale University, and while at that prodigious Ivy League school, studied with a Lakota medicine man, which, he said, changed his view on life. He traveled the world in a band called Morphine and did it again with singer-songwriter Jeffrey Folkalt. These are just facts. But now I want you to get a feel for the color and the depth and the breadth of him. Let me introduce you to Billy Conway. In the end, he thought of himself as a story.
I live like a beast most days. Family, no feast. I live like a beast. Outside, inside, I try to lose myself, but not to hide.
Everything was in obedience to the song. He was a really good listener. And he paid attention to all the words, you know. He wasn't just in there keeping time by any means. He was just wonderful, flexible cement that held the whole thing together.
Community is a word that Billy used often. Your storylines weave around my storylines, and then with all the other storylines within our community, we interlace in small ways and in infinite ways. And this thing we create when we interweave our storylines is strong enough to lift us.
And so you work on those things, and if you can make those things happen. I like to be a team player. When you play drums, as Levon says, it's good to have friends.
First time I met Billy was at Earful in Boston, back when the two of you were performing with Twineman. They used to have a jam session after the show, and I got up on the stage to play, though I was just an amateur musician at the time. I didn't really belong up there. But Billy was incredibly kind and encouraging. And he just kept nodding and smiling at me the whole time. Like he was absolutely delighted that we were getting a chance to play some music together. And there's something about his generosity and kindness that allowed me to relax and enjoy myself and play a lot better than I otherwise would have. We didn't talk much that night, but I just had this weird feeling that we'd made a connection. And I now realize that was one of his gifts, both as a musician and as a person.
It's a little bit like being an individual. We raise the cause of individualism to these hedonistic heights when really an individual, the word actually means nothing unless it's in the context of a community.
Our storylines can be sung, danced, painted, written, sculpted, rhymed, under the spotlight, and in utter darkness.
When Billy Conway was introduced on stage, he'd put his hand over his heart and thump it twice with his suitcase drum kick. He was always deep inside the song, and when we were singing it best, he'd let fly a joyful growl and flash that high beam smile. He smelled like cigarettes and horses. His hands were carved from stone. Watching him struggle to type something on a tiny phone with his caveman fingers always made me smile. His laugh was music. He always had a book in arm's reach and wanted to talk with you about it, wanted to hear what you thought. Billy was a teacher, partner, farmer, cowboy, friend, and the heartbeat of any band he was in.
I consider myself very fortunate. I had almost a decade of traveling the world with Billy Conway. Think of that. A great percentage of that time we never spoke. We would drive, fly, train for hours upon hours and not find the need for a single word. When it came to playing, this is where we conversed. Anyone who's ever played with Billy knows this feeling, where anything you settle on is infinitely better because Billy is supporting it. The unspoken language of the human soul. Between the silences and the spaces, we found the words.
Billy was a voracious reader. He consumed multiple dozens of books about Native American history. But when he learned later in life, much later than he should have, about the Mankato hangings, after having lived there as a child and never known about it, he whispered, "History is written by the victors."
Be careful what you believe.
The goal of the Billy Conway Artist Fund is to continue to weave individual storylines together through the arts. Not just from Billy's artistic community, but also between Billy's artistic community and the Native artistic community in Montana that deserves to be noticed and applauded. One person at a time may not seem like much, but the power of the human voice through art, whether it's music, literary art, or visual art, is vast and deep. We aim to make room on the platform, under the spotlight, one story at a time. It is said we can't change history, but we can alter the future. Thank you for joining this effort. Thank you for weaving your storyline into and through your community, into and through Billy's community. Thank you for being part of the Billy Conway Artist Fund.
At the end of the day, that's all we are, is just a story.
The Billy Conway Artist Fund will continue Billy's legacy by providing financial support and mentorship for emerging Indigenous artists living in Montana.